In the last few minutes, the jury in the sex trafficking trial of the music mogul P Diddy Combs has reached a partial verdict. Our correspondent John Sudworth is in New York. Bring us right up to date, John.
Well, Jane, this is a massive moment in a trial that has lasted 7 weeks, involved more than 30 witnesses, and in the dock, of course, one of the music industry's most iconic and wealthy stars. At the heart of this case is the question about the true nature of a man who was once feted by American society, showered with music industry awards, and given the honorary key to this city. Just a little.
Yeah, that's the most interesting thing. Yeah, he actually was given the key to the city. How tables turn. Let's continue.
Little more than a year ago. This trial has shown a very different side to him: abusive, controlling, and violent, aspects that the defense have not denied. The big question.
So just to elaborate, it's a partial verdict. And from what I've researched, according to the U.S. criminal justice system, a partial verdict is when a jury reaches a unanimous decision on some but not all of the charges brought against a defendant. This is usually typical for multi-count cases where the jury agrees on verdicts for certain charges but remains deadlocked on others. So in P. Diddy's case, so the jury initially decided on 4 of the 5 counts, but was stuck on the racketeering and conspiracy charge to begin with. So, because that's what they actually wanted to get him on, because those ones carry the racketeering and sex trafficking charge. Those ones usually carry like the maximum penalty. So these guys wanted to pretty much put him in jail and throw away the keys kind of situation. Never to ever come out. So the judge basically had to prolong a little bit and urged the jury to actually continue to deliberate before giving any verdicts. But ultimately, the decision for all 5 counts were announced together. And
question for the jury, though, is whether that behaviour amounted to a criminal enterprise. At the heart of this case was a video released showing him violently assaulting his then-girlfriend, Cassie Ventura, in a hotel.
We want to warn you that this video you're about to see is extremely graphic. The surveillance footage that was captured inside of a Los Angeles hotel in 2016 allegedly shows Combs assaulting then-girlfriend Cassie Ventura in a hallway. A now-settled lawsuit filed by Ventura claimed that she was trying to leave the hotel after a drunken Combs punched her. The video appears to show Combs chasing her down the hall, throwing her to the ground, and then repeatedly kicking her. So far, there's been no comment from Combs or his attorney.
So apparently, he had bribed the hotel staff to hide this video, and also pretty much everyone got something out of it in a way. And I think also there was a civil case which was settled. That was in 2023, where I think Cassie Ventura received like around 20 million. That was from the settlement. And the hotel gave 10 million on top. So in total it was around 30 million, if I'm not wrong.
Hotel room a few years ago, after a so-called freak-off, the sex parties that have been so discussed in this case, such a central part which lasted for days, involved large amounts of drugs and baby oil provided by his assistants, and which the prosecution say involved the coercion of people like Cassie Ventura to take part in them. Now, the defense have said that
it's slowly coming out that as much as there was coercion on Diddy's part, and that Cassie was also afraid of, the repercussions of going against Diddy, there is evidence that's coming out that she was calling shots. Especially, she was basically like number 2 from the little law I know from international law. And this is basically a situation whereby he was being charged for racketeering as one person. I think even Dave Chappelle mentioned it. How do you get a RICO charge? Just one person. But something tells me like if the 2 were combined, and I say 2 of them, like 2 are combined, I mean Diddy and Cassie together, and someone else was basically levying the charges against these 2. I don't know. There could be a different kind of scenario. It could have gone in a different way, because now it becomes an organization of Diddy and Cassie. But again, so they're using Cassie as the person who's charging, or they're using Cassie as the victim in this case. And I think also that's where also there was a bit of a, how can I put this? Like there was reasonable doubt, especially when it comes to criminal cases, which we'll cover a little bit later, on one of the reasons why the racketeering charge and the sex trafficking charge did not stick.
Although they do not dispute that Mr. Combs has occasionally behaved very badly, all of those sex acts were consensual. Essentially, they say that domestic violence is not the same as the charges that have been levelled in this case: sex trafficking and racketeering. Now, what we've just heard, Jane, is that the jury has reached a verdict on the sex trafficking charges, but they are yet unable to reach a verdict on racketeering. It looks as if we're not going to hear that partial verdict tonight. They're going to be sent back out. But certainly this is huge news for Mr. Combs and his team. They gathered in court looking very worried about this. He refused a plea deal, don't forget, at the beginning of this trial, betting that the jury would side with him. We are very close to the moment of knowing whether that bet has paid off.
John Sudworth.
The thing is, Diddy's defense was very, very smart. They were trying to put that, the defense was, yeah, this guy is a weirdo. Like, he's basically he is a deviant, but he's a deviant with a high temper. But he's not like a criminal boss of a racketeering enterprise. And even if he was, where is the enterprise? Everyone was an independent contractor. The charges right now are, I think, the Mann Act, which is for engaging and soliciting in prostitution. Some of these cases will actually shape the social scene in a way, which we do not know, but it will shape the social scene going forward. Because now it's going to become a situation whereby if there's a social interaction with an opposite gender and monetary gain is evident, then that might actually be constituted or can actually be twisted, end up becoming a crime, and a crime whereby you're basically engaging in and soliciting in prostitution, which could actually carry 10 years, which very wild situation.
I'm with Johnson in New York. We're coming on the air right now because the federal judge in the Sean Diddy Combs trial has just denied bail for Combs hours after a split verdict in the racketeering and sex trafficking case against him on the third day of deliberations.
Okay, so not guilty, count of racketeering and conspiracy. We're going to cover why the racketeering charge didn't stick as much as they're trying to have it stick, and the sex trafficking by force, fraud, or coercion didn't stick as well. So these two counts, count number 1 and count number 2, carried 2 life sentences. So count 1, life sentence, count 2, life sentences. And also count 4 is also similar. So that means it was bought by 2 different people. So these 3 counts here, the sex trafficking by force and racketeering, did not stick. So why didn't they stick? The prosecution alleged that P Diddy led a criminal enterprise to cover up various crimes, including sex trafficking, forced labor, drug distribution. Well, there was drugs being distributed in the freak-off parties, bribery, and obstruction of justice, e.g. the hotel incident, where the hotel staff was pretty much paid to cover up the video. Then there is also the transportation to engage in prostitution, which he was found guilty, and that carries a maximum of 10 years in prison or 20 years if consecutive, like following one another. This basically engages in part where he was flying people in, and that's being as engaging in prostitution.
The jury finding Combs not guilty on 3 of 5 counts, acquitting him of the most serious charges of racketeering, conspiracy, and sex trafficking. Combs guilty on 2 counts of transportation to engage in prostitution. Each count carries a maximum of up to 10 years behind bars. The verdict considered a huge win for Combs, who is facing the possibility of life in prison. He's been behind bars since his arrest in September. We know that the defense was hoping that Combs would be able to leave the courtroom and go back to his family today. And earlier, he even said to his family there that I'm coming home. But it turns out that that is not the case.
They're basically afraid that he's being considered a danger to the witnesses. And on top of that, there's a lot of people who abandoned this guy and also kind of helped the prosecution against him. And they're afraid that he's going to come for them, which I don't know, maybe. But I kind of think like he's probably just going to go lay low a little bit, go lick his wounds and stuff like that. But let's see. Because to be honest, I'm looking at right now is the legal team. I'm sure right now, these guys, the phone calls that these guys are receiving are just out of this world. Considering there's the Epstein list, I wouldn't even want to try to think the amount of business that P Diddy's legal team actually has and the retainers that they're actually about to receive from now going on.
Late today.
Sean Combs entered court just a moment ago, looking upbeat. He greeted his family who crammed into the gallery, all in one bench, his mother, sons, twin daughters. And I think he was anticipating that he would be released following the mixed verdict, especially the acquittal on all of the violent crimes. But the judge immediately sat down at the bench, started reading his decision, saying bail is denied. He would not be released prior to sentencing because the judge said his incarceration is required based on what he was convicted of, transportation for the purposes of prostitution. The judge said the defense did not make any successful arguments to say that that expectation should be overridden.
So from my understanding is what's happened is Diddy's lawyers managed to take advantage or they leverage on the beyond reasonable doubt on the charges for racketeering and conspiracy. And on top of that, the sex trafficking by force, fraud, or coercion. So Diddy's defense team managed to leverage on the beyond reasonable doubt standard when it comes to criminal charges. And the thing is, when it comes to that, the prosecution has to prove guilty beyond reasonable doubt. This is a higher bar compared to a civil case, where in a civil case, what you just have to do is pretty much prove the version of events that the accuser's version of events was actually more credible than Diddy's or the defendant's version of events. In a criminal trial, you have to prove beyond reasonable doubt. That means that there should be no doubt at all. The Diddy's defense basically admitted that he admitted to the domestic violence in the tape, but they managed to distinguish between him being a violent person or him having bad behaviors and being a high-tempered person from him being a criminal or him basically being a sex trafficker. His defense basically admitted to domestic violence, and the defense basically managed to make a clear line and argued that while his relationship might be toxic, this behavior does not meet legal criteria for sex trafficking or racketeering, and that does not prove guilt beyond reasonable doubt. And that's how they managed to wiggle themselves out of this, which, if you look at it, is actually quite, I don't know if it's smart, but you can actually see that they've changed this whole situation. And so the thing is, the prosecution was also supposed to prepare their rebuttal in a week, which they didn't manage to do, to continue pursuing this criminal case or continue to pursue these serious charges, the racketeering and sex trafficking charges, which they didn't do. And at that point, the judge had to basically call it and make the verdict now. And I think it was clear that, well, the prosecuting side realized, okay, shit, we got nothing here. Now they came in and they basically now are trying to push for maximum sentencing and maximum punishment with the other remaining charges. This whole thing has actually brought into light how having the right representation is key, and also has brought into light that there is holes in the legal system and it's really hard to patch them up. Because at the end of the day, when it comes to legal issues, it's usually it's like a software, the more patches you make, the more problems you create kind of situation. The ability to afford the right team to represent you kind of comes into play. So money has a big influence here. So they've scheduled another hearing for the charges that actually landed. That's the prostitution and transportation. This is said to actually occur in October, if I'm not wrong. And we'll find out what's going to happen after that. Will he manage to walk? Will the prosecution manage to get Diddy to actually spend 10 years in prison? I'm doubtful. I think he might actually walk, because it's one of those cases where when they go for maximum charge on transportation to engage in prostitution, and they do that and go for the maximum charge, it might set a precedent which, how can I put this? Might put a lot of powerful people who do engage in these activities through escorts and the likes in very precarious situations. So it's one of those cases where I kind of think that they might just be like, you know what, we wanted him for the big charges. We wanted to get him by the neck, but now we basically just have him by the leg. So unfortunately, sorry, but take the L, move on. Yeah. So that's my assumption. And also the other thing is, as usual, apparently Our famous lawyer, Tony Busby, is also cooking up something for him as well, as he does for most of the celebrities with the accusations. It's becoming a situation where just being a celebrity right now is not actually favorable. Like, it's just crazy, man. But at the end of the day, I think, well, number one, Diddy is actually a very, very devious person. That's for sure. Number two, so his legal team is about to become extremely rich, and wouldn't be shocked if there's a movie or a series about this whole situation later on. Because, I mean, the publicity in general and the part whereby a good number of people didn't think that this guy was gonna slide through, pun intended. And he actually managed to. Crazy stuff. So that's my take. Thank you for watching, and see you on the next one.